Hey, everybody. We have an awesome guest this week. It is a repeat offender, Ted Tyman. Ted is the owner of Front Door Gourmet in the Houston area, and he is married and a father of three and a very active participant and actually moderator in the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Welcome to the show, Ted.
Hey, thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I guess I should have said welcome back to the show. It's been a couple months, but it's fun having people back on. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like talking to you. So, there's that. So what's going on in your world? You just got done like single-handedly slaying Snowmageddon, right?
Yeah, it was interesting down here. Fortunately for our family, we didn't have any pipe issues. We didn't have, we lost power for a while, obviously, but never lost our water, didn't have any pipe issues. I can't say that for a lot of my friends. And so helping people out, trying to figure out how to navigate through this, not only the pipe issues, but even more significantly, the lack of materials to get that fixed. So that's been the biggest issue.
There was a short really fast.
Yeah, for sure.
uh it was kind of disheartening to get online and people, well, I didn't have internet the entire time and my phone pretty much was useless, my cell phone. We
Oh
had
man.
rolling power outages about 20 to 30 minutes of power a day. I mean, so that would be way bad, an hour. But it was, it's like cook, then move on. And then the next thing. But we didn't lose our water, have any water pipes burst, but it was hard on folks. It was, I walked around, I walk a lot. I was walking around, there's just piles of carpet out on people's front yards because their houses
Yeah.
were flooded.
Yeah, I've been seeing that driving around too. It's pretty rough.
Yeah. Yeah. So it basically put me out of work for a week. I couldn't do anything. Were you tied down technology wise, or were you good to go?
Yeah, we lost our internet for it would come back up when power came back up and then go back out and hit and miss. It was a little bit rough, but kind of like what you said, power would turn on and I'd instantly hop up and do the half an hour worth of things I knew I could get done and had to get done before the power potentially went back out. Fortunately for us, because we're still in a shared kitchen, we only cook a couple days a week, and that's at the end of the week. So by the time that came around, the power was back, the water was clean, and we were good to go.
What I was saying earlier was the fact that uh, people were just getting brutal online. Like Texans, they just don't know they don't know how to handle anything. They're so high and mighty, and they just got weakened at the knees by a little weather. And it's my wife's like, yeah, well, some of those folks give them 115 degrees for a month straight and see how they feel. We just
Yeah,
don't have the infrastructure for it. Our pipes are exposed. They're, we just didn't have the infrastructure for it. And then I also learned that there was a lot of errors that didn't weren't necessarily things that needed to happen. But that's neither here nor there. But one thing I did notice, and maybe you did, is in the community, people were just out helping each other. It was like just people were dropping what they're doing and helping their neighbor. And I've just seen a ton of that, especially with the plumbing. Lots of creative ideas going out. People going to the auto part store and grabbing hoses and patching with auto hoses, which seemed to work. All sorts of crazy things people were doing. So it was really cool to kind of see people come together and kind of pitch in on their community and make things happen. So
yeah, similar down here. Just a lot of folks jumping in. Any skills that you had that could be beneficial were being used. I have several friends who are electricians that because they're handy, they jumped in and became plumbers for a week and did everything they could to help. And most of that was just capping off pipes until the parts could come available. But it's still what they could do to help. And isn't that what it's all about? Is just jumping in and offering your skills to do whatever you can.
I agree. I kind of feel like the kind of a great way to explain the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. We are an online community. It's a podcast, but it really does kind of thrive when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z," or "What do you guys do in this situation?" And you got men just coming in with, I would say 90% of the time coming in with positive, encouraging moving forward. And then we got the small percent that comes in and just kind of wastes the breath and wastes the space. But um, so you've been part of the brotherhood for I don't know how long, pretty close to the beginning. What does it mean to you? What have you found with this?
Yeah, pretty close to the beginning, actually. I've been in for a long time. It's great as it's expanding, and it's fun to watch the different contributors rise to the top. And you kind of start to recognize names and recognize the value in their contributions. And so that's kind of fun. And it's always nice to see new names that have something good to say. But I think it's what I really like is the varying perspectives, right? Not everybody is a 40 something man with 3 daughters in Houston, Texas, right? You've got some young guys that have jumped in that are just having their first kids. We've got some guys that are grandfathers. We have people sharing from their experiences of what went well in their lives. We have people sharing from their experiences of, hey, this was horrible for me, so I learned not to do this, and maybe that's helpful to you also. Just from every perspective, guys jumping in, and like you said, I think the vast majority of guys are really trying to contribute some positivity and some solid help to the brothers that are asking for it.
But yeah, it's been a really fun thing. It's very interesting to see how men respond differently to different situations, and I see some turmoil come through and men respond in sarcasm or kind of kicking people when they're down. It's not very frequent, but I have seen that. And it's interesting to watch the psychology of how people react, but mostly it's highly, highly supportive. And I find it interesting because so many, I think people are more open and honest and giving in the group than they would be in person with men.
Mm.
Have you thought about that all? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I think I can agree with that. I think it plays largely into our kind of social media mindset, which ends up being negative a lot of the time on social media. But the idea that it's a lot safer to bare your heart or say your piece behind a computer than it is to look into somebody's eyes and say something that might cause you to be a little vulnerable or just create a situation where you're bearing yourself a little more than you feel comfortable. Behind a computer, that might be a little easier. And it is interesting to watch the sarcasm, the kick them when they're down kind of comments, and the defense mechanism that guys have to maybe that guy's struggle hits a little too close to home, and instead of just chiming in or following along to try to pick up some good advice, they decide they've got to get their little poke in. One thing my wife and I talk about all the time is the idea that the things that frustrate you or aggravate you or annoy you the most are typically things that at some level in your life you're struggling with yourself.
Absolutely. I think there's same echo. I think the vulnerability part is a big deal. You touched on that, and we've had a lot of conversations in the podcast about that recently, is the men and vulnerability. I actually believe that being vulnerable is what actually can help you grow. It's actually a catapult to growth. And so it's actually a manly thing. And I think for a long time, people thought of it as not manly, but when I've seen the most growth is when men are vulnerable to other men and open up their world a little bit to allow for some mentoring and some wisdom to come in, and people who've walked in the shoes before and whatnot. So what is your view on vulnerability? Person to person, have you been in a place in your life where you've had men that you're vulnerable with, you share your fears and your frustrations and your failures with, or you've been pretty tied off?
No, it's I'm a pretty open book, maybe to a fault sometimes. But I've learned, maybe gained wisdom, maybe just from kicking myself in the head a few times. I've learned that I want to make sure I have enough relationship with that person to go there, to protect myself and to protect them, and just to make sure that I'm not divulging myself to somebody that isn't ready to reciprocate the kind of relationship and advice or support that I'm looking for. So, but I do have several relationships in my life currently with men that I can sit down with and just pour my heart out and say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. There are still things in my life that I have dealt with or do deal with that I'm not as prone to share. I'm not a completely open book and not 100% vulnerable, but I'm working on it because I think that really benefits myself and other people. You know, it gives other people a chance to realize, hey, I'm not the only person that struggles, and Ted's willing to share with me his struggles. Maybe I should think about opening up and sharing my struggles with somebody else. So
yeah, I think one of my things that I have found is that I can actually articulate so much better when I write it out as opposed to talking about it. Like you know, sometimes I'll put long form posts in there. I don't know if anybody reads them, but that's really where I'm thinking, you know, digging into the soul of what's really going on, what's really working my brain, what's kind of weighing on me at that moment. And that's the place of vulnerability I've found is when I go in and I just kind of bear it all. But I've also found that there's like a lot of times guys are like, this is what I needed to hear. I needed to know someone else was going through it. Right.
For sure. Yeah. I definitely, I read them and I appreciate them. And it's great to see that kind of vulnerability. And I think it takes time, but I think you leading that charge is creating a culture. And it may be slow moving, but you're creating that culture of vulnerability. And soon more and more guys will follow that lead and be able to share their hearts and open up. And as long as we as a community continue to offer positive advice and support, I think it'll just continue to happen more and more. In fact, I have been slow to do that, not because I don't want to be vulnerable, but I'm the opposite of you. I would much rather just sit down and communicate verbally how I'm feeling than sit down and type. But there are definitely a few things that I've been thinking about that I want to put out there and see what the guys have to say. So that's probably coming this next week, I would think.
That's awesome. I know that when you open up like that, you do open up yourself to a lot of it's vulnerability allows pain to, you know, to be introduced. You're giving a something of yourself that others can take advantage of. So I know it's kind of a big step. And so speaking of vulnerability, I want to share one of my most current and biggest struggles right now. And it's actually something I talk a lot about and I preach a lot about, not preach, but teach a lot about, coach a lot about inside of this group. And it's being present. I have a tendency personally to overwork, and I do not know how to shut it off. I have a very difficult time shutting work off or a project I'm working on. And I recently kind of slapped me across the face. I've told the story in the podcast already, but it slapped me across the face that I was kind of back at a place where I had gone down a really bad pathway of really just neglecting the family. And I know I wasn't even close to where I was at before, but I was able to recognize it because I have talked about it so much and I have been super intentional about it, but I've been falling back into this where work is never ending. And I've taken, as you know, pretty drastic steps, which I have a post coming up on in a week or so, but I've taken very drastic steps to alleviate that overwhelm or overwork. You are a business owner, so I know you are not free of this problem at all. And I want to kind of pick your brain on how you handle being present with your daughters or with your wife when there is so much to get done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I can say that it's easier for me, but not because of a positive reason. It's easier for me because I really fight laziness. Actually, that's one of my bigger struggles is I have to be super intentional to be motivated and get the stuff done. I was the guy in college that had a paper due at 8:35 on Monday morning, and I would figure out how many hours I thought it was going to take me to write it. And I would literally wake up at 4 o'clock on Monday morning so I could write a 4-hour paper and go to class. And unfortunately, that's been a challenge for me throughout my life. So my bigger struggle is to make sure, not that I don't get things done that I have to get done, but like you said, you mentioned that you get involved in projects and then you get lost in those projects, and those projects probably spawn 2 more projects and you get lost in those projects. And I understand all of that stuff. My issue is I need to dive into that a little bit more to do the external projects that will benefit me long term. And so I get the things done I have to get done, but I do struggle with getting the extra stuff done. So all that to say, my biggest struggle in that, and what I do is I definitely spend that time with my kids. My struggle is making sure that it's intentional. So there are times that I'm sitting around with my kids and I'll realize, yeah, there's been an hour has gone by and we haven't said a word to each other.
Right.
Watching the television or seeing a movie, or which is not inherently bad, but if that becomes the core of what you do when you're together, how much attentiveness and intentionality is there in that relationship? So I think you and I come at it from completely opposite sides, which I don't, it's going to happen, right? We all come at life from different angles, but for me, when I'm focused and doing the way I'm supposed to do, or I feel like I should be doing, what helps me is being, you're really good at schedule and routine and all of that stuff. And you talk a lot about building that routine into your day and knowing how your day is going to play out. And I do that. Again, I'm not great at it. I'm not great at all the application aspect of it, but mentally I do. And so I'll say, hey, I know that I have time this morning, so I'm going to make sure I take my kids to school. And when I do, we'll have a little conversation on the way. I've got time today. I'll make sure I pick my kid up from school. Now, once we move into our space, this is going to change and I'm going to completely have to reevaluate how I do this. But currently I've got a little more free time, at least in the beginning of the week. So I make sure that we actually, for the first time in quite a while, have just reinstituted a family dinner night. And I know some families can sit down for dinner every night. That has not really ever been our MO, partially because I spent a long part of our life with kids working 80 plus hours, and partially just because kids have activities, life is busy. So we've established that Tuesday night is a night that we can all be together and there's going to very rarely be a distraction, at least at this point. So we recently implemented that, and it's been really good for us to reconnect, and hard too. I mean, that's the thing that we don't talk about, right? Is the idea that just because we're being intentional with our family, we set aside Tuesday night dinner and it's going to be this glorious 2 hours where the food's going to taste better and the conversation is going to be excellent and the game is going to play out perfectly. And that's just not reality, especially with my 2 teenagers and my soon to be 3rd teenager, all girls, all dealing with their own stuff. It's often bickering and frustration and pointing fingers and doing stupid stuff. And my wife and I oftentimes will leave those family times exhausted.
Yeah.
But we know it's important. And so we're doing it. But I think that's the part of this message that maybe I felt led to talk about today, is just the idea that we do these intentional things, not because we know it's going to be perfect. We don't tell our wives we love them 20 times a day because we know that's going to turn into getting lucky tonight. We hope it does. Sometimes it does, but we do it because that's the right thing to do. And if it turns out the way we want it to or not, we still commit to those practices. And over time, I believe it's going to get easier and easier and produce better and better results.
It is. I'm going to just say it is, because we've been doing family dinners. I don't know how long, but we've been extremely intentional about that. I will give us that. At least 3, probably 4 to 5 times a week. And
Oh man.
we will do crazy hours if we have to because somebody's gone or whatever. And it used to be awkward. It used to be weird. There used to be fighting. There used to be like, and now it is so natural. And the thing that I've seen about it is we have conversations. I'm working on getting wins out of my boys every day because there's so much programming inside of us young on that we focus on the negatives, and it's really hard to identify wins. So you actually have to practice that. So I work with them. We do that at dinner. We talk about the day at dinner, but we've over lots and lots of practice, over
Yeah.
lots of time of me bringing my phone to the table and getting distracted and learning, wait, that's not what I do. And so we're eventually now um, it's digital free, except for one caveat. And I will be honest about this. I do have a personal system that is extremely dialed in. It's taken me 2.5 years to dial it in. Where if a thought comes to my mind or a thing comes to my mind, I will sit in that thing and I'll either forget it or I'll sit and mull on it and I won't be able to get it out of my head. So I capture it. I put it in a system I have. It's an app. So everybody knows at the table, excuse me, everybody knows at the table that if I'm picking out my phone, I'm capturing an idea and I'll say capturing, and it's like 2 seconds and it's back down. But what's happened over time is now my son has a girlfriend and she's come over and it's really crazy. Like she sits down and we just have a regular, really fun time like we normally do. It didn't change the dynamics because we've been doing it and practicing it for so long. So I'd encourage you. It really does come into play. And I love that, I love that you said your tendencies are almost the exact opposite of mine. And this was not intended to be a plug, but I am doing a workshop on March 6th
I've
for
already signed up.
okay, yeah, for productivity hacking
Yeah.
because I want to teach that capture system so that we can
Yeah.
keep things off our mind and really be attentive on what we're needing to be attentive. And it also, on the flip side, it actually helps you put things into play so that you don't not do it. It actually assigns things to times. You actually assign things to times, and it's like, oh, I got to do that, and it keeps you on track. So that is actually something I'm doing March 6th. You can look at my personal page, and I'll try and post it in the Brotherhood. But um, like I've learned this, and it has absolutely rocked my world, and I want to share it with as many people as possible because it has changed how I can get things done. Because I used to be somebody who just worked, but had zero like direction. It was just random. Something would hit my brain, I'd stop and go in that direction. I don't think it was ADD. I just think it was just I'm always wanting to work. Um, but I love that you guys are working on being intentional. Another time that I absolutely love with my kids is in the car. I don't know about you, but if it's one on one, man, that's the usually that's the chance I get to get them to open up and tell me what's going on. Has that been your situation as well?
We do. We chat. We actually bond a lot through music. So we'll do a lot of singing when we're driving in the car, and have fun singing songs together and goofing around like that. We definitely do have the conversations. My kids, all being girls, there's only a certain level of vulnerability that they want to have with me, openness, and certain things they don't want to chat with me about, which is fine. I'm okay with that. As long as they know that they can talk to me about anything. Yeah, that's the important part for me. But yeah, we bond through music. We have conversation, but the car is absolutely a good one for us.
Yeah. How about with your wife? What do you do to intentionally be present with your wife?
Yeah, that's been a challenge also, right? Because what speaks love to her and attention and intentionality is different than what speaks love and attention and intentionality to me. So again, it's a constant battle of me being aware of what's going to speak love to her and doing my best to accommodate that, and then also well, no, just that, really, not also. The thing for me is she loves dates, of course, makes sense. And I'm super afraid of spending money all the time, especially as we're starting up a business. So we've had to have some conversations about what this can look like, and we've gotten much better at doing low cost dates. Sometimes we just go out for a drive, just drive around for a couple hours and chat in the car, or go find some place to walk for an hour and chat. And this seems to be good for her. It's stuff I love to do. But there was a long period of time where I was thinking, well, yeah, we sit down and chat at night and maybe watch a TV show or something. That's pretty awesome. And realized that was not touching her needs at all. So I've had to be more intentional about, for her, out of the house is where she feels like she's being cared for. And for me, I'm happy being in the house and doing that. So she has been really good about working with me, with not needing to go out to dinner and a movie every time we leave the house. And $80 later, we're done. And I have worked really hard to be intentional about going out of the house. So we've also made Tuesday our date day recently. Tuesday's pretty much our day off at this point. And so we go try to spend a few hours together. Yesterday, we went down to one of the state parks and just hiked around for a couple hours and looked at alligators and chatted, and it was awesome. It was really great. And what I found is the more we do those deep conversation hangout times, the easier it is to broach some topics that have been challenging along the way. And so I think we just keep going deeper. I know the last time we chatted on the podcast, we had conversation about having those tough conversations and not wanting to have them. And I mean, I still don't want to have them. Who wants to have those conversations? But I'm finding it easier and easier. And we, even in our casual walk yesterday, we discussed through some stuff that a year or two ago would have only come up in the middle of one of those really heated, uncomfortable 3-hour conversations. And it came up, it went by in 3 or 4 minutes, was addressed by both of us, and we moved on. And it was so some significant progress due to being intentional about having those conversations and just being together and chatting.
That's incredible, and it's a very encouraging story. And you actually brought something up that I've been thinking a lot about, and I've really struggled probably for the last 2 years. Is I know the importance of dating, and I every week it's always been my goal, and I found myself skipping it for financial reasons. I mean, we kind of went through coming out of a very rough, patch financially, where it's just been, adding, like you said, $80 for a date. Uh, she loves it. She absolutely loves it. But we both would end up stressed at the money spent. And not probably 6 months ago, we just drove and parked at it was a off day. It wasn't Sunday, and it was at a church parking lot. And we sat there for like an hour and just talked. And it made me remember the fact that when we were dating, I wasn't loaded, and you had to actually be creative. And I think that there's a lot of power in dating. Like, we hear these guys talk about dating. Oh, I take her to the bar. I do this and this. And I just think, how in the world do you afford that? And it's, and instead of like having that mindset of, um, I don't have, I changed my mindset to like, how did I do this before? And it was a lot of fun. And so I've focused a lot more on that, like driving somewhere and walking, like you said, or, going on drives or parking. And one of the guys in the Brotherhood posted that it was cold. They were in their car, and him and his wife got in there and they started making out. And I'm like, that's so perfect.
Awesome.
It's so perfect. Like, why can't we do these things? Like, think about what you were like as a high school or a college student. You're just trying to make out or whatever it is you're trying to do, and you got creative. And I think that's back to the pursuit. Like, when we get creative, we're back into pursuing our whys. We're having to put our brain to it. And so I love that you guys are doing that, because that really brings me joy to think that other men are kind of embracing this. Let's make it an adventure. It's my job to make this work, whether it's a financial hardship or a time hardship, or there's nothing to do around us. It just comes down to creativity.
Well, and that the interesting thing is the financial hardship, the financial issue was mine. My wife never thought about that part. She's like, it's no big deal. We're fine. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I keep the money stuff and we're not really fine. So, but doesn't that make it my responsibility then to be the creative one?
Right.
I mean, that puts it all on me. And this is how dense I can be sometimes. My wife, on a regular basis, so she spends a lot of time with her mom. Her mom's by herself. And she's constantly telling me, yeah, I'm going to go spend the day with my mom. We're going to go drive out to here and walk around and look at stuff. And once or twice a week, she's doing this whenever she can. And she's always telling me this. And for months, I'm like, oh, that's great. You go do that with your mom, not really putting two and two together, realizing, well, hey, that's something she loves to do. I could probably do that with her. And I kind of think that she might like doing that with me even more.
Yeah.
So we did it, and it's wonderful and makes her happy. It makes me happy. And one thing that's interesting is by dating her more. So what would happen is she would ask me for a date, which I don't want her to have to do, right? Just like I don't want to have to ask for romance or physical relationship. I want her to realize that I need it and be there for me, and I don't want her to have to ask me for a date. And she was having to do it constantly. And then me, being the genius, responded, well, we already had our date this month, because we were budgeting for one date a month when we were on a really tight budget. And she'd say, oh, no, we didn't. And I'd think back and realize, oh my gosh, it's been like 5 weeks and what an idiot I am. And so, like you said, once a week is my goal now. And hopefully she doesn't listen to this podcast anytime soon. But no, when she does, she knows that my goal is once a week, and it's my job then to turn that $80 or $100 date budget into 4 really good experiences.
And those are have more time, have more time to talk usually. I agree. And, vulnerability on a podcast is always interesting because you don't know who's going to listen. But like I just a while back talked about my systems. I capture things. I have checklists of things for certain days at certain intervals. And one of the things that I have that hits my phone every weekend is date night, no exceptions. And it's been incredible. My wife doesn't know it's in there, but she might now. But that's not the point. I'm being intentional. And like Friday, like last week was, it was kind of a crapshoot with the weather and everything, but I like forced something. And I don't remember, the store was opened up. So we went out and went to the store and walked around and had fun. And I kind of saw like to capture that opportunity, but I didn't think she was going to see that as a date. And I told her, I said, I really am trying to be intentional about, going on a date. And she goes, I thought the store was an awesome date. So she was actually in the same mindset. Like we just got out, we had fun, and we released everything that was going on. But I think there is no harm in having these goals and having reminders and things, because we're men and we get distracted,
For
and we
sure.
need to put things in place to keep us from to keep us in line. I mean, not all of us, but most of us, and I'm okay with that. I'm
Yeah,
okay with reminders.
absolutely. And I need that, I need that in every aspect of my life. You've got a great system. I can't wait to learn more about it in a couple weeks. But yeah, I need that in all aspects of my life, and especially when it comes to loving on my family. I mean, they're right at the top of my priority list. And they need that kind of attention and that kind of intentionality.
Yeah, something I've done is I've actually put in my system that every day I make sure I have a serious hug with my boys. So it's a checklist item for me. And that's interesting. It's a challenge with middle schoolers and high schoolers because they run away, they do their things, and so sometimes I'm hunting them down. And of course, my one win every day is in there, and then it's I randomly have in there on kind of a random cycle. Uh, Today is one thing that different that I love about my wife and sharing it with her. And so I did that yesterday, and it was like, she's like, oh, that was really nice. Where did that come from? Like, ah, it's just, yeah, something I'm thinking about. But you were talking earlier about emotional and sexual. I mean, women operate typically women
Right.
operate on emotional intimacy, and we operate on sexual intimacy. And for men, foreplay is emotional intimacy. It's listening. It's being attentive. So it's a great practice. Sounds like you're really kind of working on dialing that in, and I think that's a big deal.
For sure. And well, you're right. And it definitely has that that physical benefit. If we make commitment to it and do it right, I think most guys out there, if they commit to doing the emotional, the relational, doing the emotional part, will find the physical part follows along in a very positive way.
Absolutely. We for a while we're putting into the group, how to have more sex, and it's all about investing with emotional intimacy with your wife. And
For sure.
like, let's just be clear. There's a pretty easy path there. It's a hard work. It's hard work and it's a lot of intentionality, but it is there. But it has to be done with authenticity. You can't just fake
Correct.
things. So, yes. Excuse me. So with your kids, driving, dinner, those types of things, do they have events you go to? Are they
Yeah.
involved in things that you go watch them perform or whatever?
Yeah, they do. Not as much at this current time, with all the COVID stuff, things have changed a little bit. But during football season, we went to all the football games. My daughter is on the color guard,
Oh,
so we
cool.
went to all the football games and got really into that. I never thought I'd be a high school football fan, but I'm addicted now. So I can't wait for the next season to come around. My oldest is not doing anything right now, but always gone to all of her plays, all of her concerts, and things like that. And my youngest is also in theater. We go to all of her stuff. She wants to be an athlete, so she's working on. She actually wants to be a cheerleader, which is probably the right fit for her. So we'll go to all of her games that we can. And yeah, I think being intentional about going to the kids' activities. I'm not officially a youth leader, but I go to the youth group on Wednesday nights with my kids every week that I can, and that's a couple hours that we interact, and I catch them looking at me when I'm there, so I know that they recognize that I'm there and I'm supporting them, and it means a lot to them, and it's a good time for me too. So, but yeah, I think it's super important, and I do the best I can. My parents were really great at that. My mom was at everything. My dad was at everything. Well, my dad was at a lot of the things that he could be at, and I'm super appreciative of that example.
Interesting say about kids looking at you when you're watching them. I kind of made this a practice. I'm watching kids play and look up at their fathers or their mothers. There's two things that there's three ways that I see this go. It's one, they look up and their parent is deep in their phone, not paying any attention. And you can see from no matter how far away you are, you can see just them deflate, right? So and then the other one is the kid who's looking to his dad for affirmation because that's probably the only place he gets affirmation is performance playing. And you can see the chest go up or the sunken demeanor if it's not a good play and dad's yelling. The other one is the biggest fan. A parent who's just cheering them on, eyes on, and they just float. They float. They look up. They're not always looking up, but when they capture it, the child floats. And I just want to be that parent who makes my child float, whether they're doing well or not. I want them to do well. Obviously, I'm very competitive,
Right.
but they're having a good time and they're realizing that their performance isn't we're not responding to their performance. We're responding to their experience. So I love
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've made, especially with my middle daughter, because it's more fitting for her personality. But at the football games, every time she'd walk out for color guard, she's always looking up there for us. And I got in this habit of doing really embarrassing things for her, and her friends love it. They all just laugh and they're all looking at us. So it got to the point by the end of the season that half of the color guard kids are looking up to try to figure out what Genevieve's dad's going to do to embarrass her. And she gets a big grin on her face and then hangs her head and shakes her head no, but she loves it. And also the cell phone thing. That's a funny thing that you brought that up, because we used to go. My middle daughter used to play competitive softball, and so we were at tournaments all the time, and I'd get called on it constantly because I was very attentive in the games. But if they did ever look over and see that I was on my phone after the game, be like, "Daddy, you missed this play I did. You were looking at your phone." And But I like that. I appreciate that because it lets me know that they care that I'm there.
Mhm.
And I know that I was fairly attentive, mostly attentive. So it just reminded me that, hey, they're looking all the time. I need to be on board.
It's so funny guard story because my wife is such a big fan of my boys, and my son is very good at trombone, and he's in the marching band, and he's in the leadership of the marching band. In marching, just see everyone outside of Texas doesn't know that marching band and color guard work together. They're extremely competitive in Texas. It's very competitive. We have top in the nation. At least our school is one of the top in the nation, and it's extremely serious. And my wife will stand up and wave and make sure my son knows where she's at, and she'll do it until she gets some. And they're supposed to be like, where in his position, he's just supposed to be, stoic and straight and no distractions. And she'll do it until she thinks that he's acknowledged it, and he's just like, stop it. But I know he loves it. I
Of
know
course.
he's digging it up.
Yeah.
So
They might not admit it now, but even if they don't admit it now, when they come back 5, 6 years from now, that's a story they're going to tell. Remember how you were so goofy at my games all the time and embarrassing me in front of my friends? They love it. I know they do.
yeah, I think there's a fine line, but I think we're doing it right.
Yeah, that's true.
um, yeah, so I just love watching parents do it right. And then I literally crawl inside my skin when I see it done wrong. When I see the judgment happening. Actually, I have a podcast guest coming up uh, is who works with student athletes, and the stories they tell themselves, and then he works with their parents on the way that they treat their student athletes,
Mm,
and just to talk about talking and supporting and what not to do and what to do, because there's so much damage done.
yeah,
There's so much incredibly horrible damage done if we don't do that right as parents. We're not coaches. We are, but there's this fine line. He's going to talk about that. I'm really excited about that because I think it's a big deal. It's a big deal in our society and performance and sports. And how do we be a fan without overdoing it?
right.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, or wrapping up, I wanted to, first of all, publicly thank you, Ted, because you guys may not know, I've been in an extremely over the top busy time of my life, and I'm really focusing on working with being attended with my family, even though I'm having to work top to bottom days. And Ted has stepped in and has helped moderate the Facebook group, and I'm gonna get choked up. Has uh, caught some things and done some things that have taken a massive load off of me, and I don't have to worry about always checking in on that. So I want to publicly thank you, because I don't think you understand the impact that's had on me as well as my family. And I think that's a big power of the brotherhood, is when we have a need, there's probably other brothers in there we can call on and get a little relief. So you epitomize what I'm, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you reflect what I'm wanting to see in men in the brotherhood. And so I want to publicly thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate you trusting me with some ability to help facilitate in the brotherhood. It's a great group of guys, and as I read posts, I think to myself sometimes, man, I have no idea why I'm allowed to be a part of this when there's so many brilliant fathers and great guys that are involved in this thing. So I really appreciate you allowing me to be a part of the just to be able to contribute in a significant way. That's it's humbling and it's my passion too to see men growing in their relationships with their kids and with their wives and with each other. So I'm grateful that you've given me this outlet.
Yeah. Awesome, Ed. Well, I really appreciate you coming back. Repeat. It's not the last time. And for the audience, I'm sorry if you're hearing those echoes. It's driving me crazy. We'll try and edit them out, but there's no way around it. But this stuff is just too good not to get out. And so a little technical difficulty. I hope you hung through that. Um, Ted, I hope you are blessed for spending time with me, and so for spending time in this group. And we've got years and years and years of really great things coming. Thank you for being a guest, brother.
You're welcome, Scott. Thanks a lot.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. You guys have just an amazing day.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.